Good morning. Good morning, GM. GM. Folks, welcome to another episode of FOMO HOUR. Today is Monday, February 17th, 2025. It is President's Day, a holiday in the USA. We were almost going to be off for today, but we could not be off today, folks. There is a famous quote: there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And this week/weekend was a decade moment for crypto, or at least the meme coin sector. That's certainly how it feels here this morning. We had a scandal that reached a president of one of the largest countries in the world. It has rocked the entire crypto ecosystem. It has rocked the Argentinian stock market. The impacts are wide, and the story is getting deeper by the hour. We are going to break it all down on today's show. No Farokh, sadly, he is out in Asia. I think Mando is going to be joining us. He's not on just yet. Want to hear from him. He broke down the story this morning. But I've got Logan on with me, Decrypt writer, previously editor-in-chief over at Lucky Terry. Logan, GM, how are you feeling after this weekend?
Hey, good morning, Tyler. How am I feeling? My head is in a mess of chaos and frenzy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's been a wild, last 48, 60, 72 hours. It's just been bonkers. No other way to describe it, really.
Bonkers indeed. We've got Mando now, and the shirt is on. Needed this morning. Mando, GM, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think I might have aged another year this weekend, but I posted this last night. I feel like this whole situation went so fast, and we'll get into it in a second. It feels like we're already starting to maybe come out the other side of this thing. Like, it was anger and depression, and now it's almost like some of the vibes are starting to flip a little bit, and we actually might see a path out of this. So we'll talk about that, folks. What are we going to talk about on today's show? Well, I think we got to start with the LIBRA scandal. It was the story of the weekend, arguably the story of the year, maybe even the cycle. What happened? Who's involved? The CoffeeZilla interview, and then market impact. What happens now? What happens to Sol? What happens to ETH? What happens to the meme coin sector? We'll get into all of that. Plus, we got to share some positive news. There were several actually really positive macro bullish headlines on Friday that have already been totally forgotten about. We also got some big news out of Kaido this morning. It looks like that Kaido airdrop might be as soon as this week. So some surprising acceleration from that team. So there is a lot to get into. Before we do that, shout out to our partners. So for one, Galaxis. Galaxis is a Web3 platform empowering creators and brands to build unstoppable communities with full ownership and independence, trusted by icons like Donald Trump, Steve Aoki, Mike Tyson, and the NBA, shaping together the future of engagement. And every day, we see people's wallets get drained. Fairside is about to launch the fair alternative to insurance for crypto scams. Check out @Fairside Network on X. If you get drained, you won't get wrecked. We love our partners, as always. Shout out to them. Mando, if you're ready, let's get right into it.
Who is the man, macro daddy of the land? Can you dig it?
Yeah, GM, everyone. So it has been a bit of a weekend. I actually was kind of checked out this weekend. I came back from Paris. As I was landing, the Argentina coin dropped, and then it kind of was pretty like by the end of my taxi to my house, it was clear that it was already like semi-rugging. And then I just like occasionally went back on CT this weekend. So I did largely miss like the back and forth and the drama. It's just why I did like a TLDR today. But it's very, very tough to separate kind of even the macro moves today from this because it's a US holiday. So obviously there's not a lot going on in macro. There's some light stuff going on. Like it does feel as though, the Ukrainian situation is kind of coming more to a head/resolution. On one half, you have the US and potentially Putin trying to negotiate this kind of separate to Europe and Ukraine. And then you have Europe essentially trying to reorganize right now to have a say in what's going to happen. There's been a lot of talk about them potentially putting troops in Ukraine. That one's just kind of, it's coming to a head though, basically Ukraine. Like it's very, very clear that we're going to have some sort of I wouldn't know if it's going to be a resolution, but things are starting to get done, which is going to be an interesting one. And even Argentina stock index was down 6 or 7% on the back of what's gone on today with this Libra coin. But elsewhere, it's like it feels like a bit of a non-event in macro. There's some big raises going on in AI, it looks like, but like this week's very quiet from a data standpoint. We get FOMC minutes on Saturday. I think it's the German election, but largely it's a very quiet week, which means we can just kind of talk about crypto quite a lot this week, apart from some of those geopolitics stuff and like different leaders meeting each other. But yeah, this coin happened on Friday, and obviously a big rug. Obviously, maybe I won't go into all the details of it, but the ramifications have really been that a lot of people calling for the end of like the Sol Casino, a lot of bearish takes on Solana. It looks like Solana is down about 10% since I got out of that taxi ride. It was over 200 then, and it's now a decent amount lower than that and kind of hanging out in the mid 180s at the moment. ETH is higher, so a lot of people moving into ETH. You obviously have the unlock coming up or have a few unlocks during these months, which people are also taking advantage of. But it feels as though the main thing has just been a bit of a sentiment shift, like the casino is a little bit rigged. Whereas I think Pump Fund, the vibe of Pump Fund since the start has been like fair launches, all this sort of stuff. And even if like team members or in that sense insiders got in, the sense of like the rugging here seems pretty high, and it seems kind of institutional levels of rigging at several levels. And I think people have been really annoyed about the whole like hyper rotation meta when it's clear that like this stuff has been going on at the same time. So I just think like a lot of people have just come out of this weekend being like, right, I don't want to be involved in Solana anymore, just because it's just a gambling chain and I've had enough of gambling because I've been losing money for too long. So a lot of movement, it feels like, away from that into ETH, BNB, Bitcoin, and part of that is matched up with some positive developments for those other majors. So you've had Bitcoin, Abu Dhabi revealed that they have a large amount of Bitcoin. This is a sovereign wealth fund with hundreds of billions of dollars potentially to invest. You have obviously, like I said, the ETH unlocks, the Solana unlocks, but there's been some talk, at least from ETH side, about increasing gas limits and just a resolution to some of the SEC cases against people like Coinbase, Uniswap. That there's a movement even for that for XRP as well too, pretty clearly at the moment. So maybe some of the FUD surrounding some of the other changes is alleviating at the same time that people are getting annoyed about the Solana casino. So I don't know how long this will last. Generally, I don't think this is the nail in the coffin for Solana, but I think a lot of people have lost a lot of money, and this leaves a really bad taste in the mouth for a lot of people, to the extent that they kind of are looking for trades where they can just set and forget it now for a little bit. And there's not a lot of that on Solana. Like Solana was the hyper rotation chain, which you could make a lot of money on, but like now people are just completely giving up on that, it feels like, and moving on. So it'll be interesting to see how this one develops. The biggest movers on the back of this have been ETH, but also some of the legacy ETH memes. So like Mog is up a decent amount today. Pepe's up. Some of the BNB memes have been doing slightly better, but that's what I've generally seen. Is interesting to see like money, even like the more degen money is flowing in there. And then for majors, it seems to be ETH. ETH is the main outperformer, although BNB's doing decently well too. So Yeah, I don't know how this one's going to develop from here. I reckon we'll hear a lot more. But this doesn't feel again like a cycle top to me. This feels like is Solana still the trade of the rest of the cycle rather than a cycle top? Nothing about the flows. Again, stablecoin usage, general usage of the blockchain, even the way the market is reacting right now, where it's not like everything's dumping. Like if this was FTX, everything would have dumped, right? And it's not. It's not. In fact, I think crypto total market cap is probably pretty much the same as where it was at the start of the weekend, which tells you that like it's really just a reassessment of where we are and what to earn.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I want to get into the downstream market impacts of this. I think, Mando, we have to talk a little bit more about what happened with this story. So you actually did quite a nice job summarizing this. So I was curious how plugged in you were this weekend. It felt like maybe you were unplugged.
I was completely unplugged. Yeah,
it was a good weekend to be unplugged. You didn't age as much as the rest of us. So effectively, kind of what happened. There started to be growing chatter about this Argentina coin launching on Friday. And then...
Have you heard about it? I had not heard a single word, but I was in Paris. So
I had one chat group say that they had heard rumors of some kind of Argentina coin. And that was early Friday afternoon.
Right.
No other details beyond that. But that right there shows you how wide this one was. Because like I am not a well-connected trenches. So like this was a very public rumor at this point in time. It was Valentine's Day. So I want to set the stage for Friday actually a little bit. It's Valentine's Day. Actually, like the markets were pumping on Friday. Like hype was over 27. Like Farokh coin was up. Like a lot of the tokens were green. And like it felt like, okay, maybe we're starting to round the bottom on some of the recent depression. And then the Libra coin launches. I was actually at dinner with the family when this all dropped. And so I kind of missed the 2-hour window that this all really ran up and then immediately back down. So this coin launches, I think, Logan, if you were maybe jump in, I think it opened basically at $1. You could not, which was a $1 billion market cap. You really could not have gotten in much cheaper than that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You got in there. It ran as high as 4. And then like you can see that this is the 1-hour chart. So in the second hour of trading, it already went from 250 down to sub $1. So within the first 2 hours, anyone who bought was already down on the token. And man, you kind of lay out some of the events here. So Milei, president of Argentina, tweeted about it. I think that the idea of the token was to help fund business development in Argentina. People started kind of rallying behind the cause, even though there's a lot of questions about why you would crowdfund via a meme coin like this. There were some loud voices on the timeline who were promoting this. And then, quickly things started to go south. Milei tweeted again that he had nothing to do with this. And that's what really effectively killed the token. And then like the rest of the weekend, the story just really got deeper. So it seems like this Kelsier Ventures, Hayden Davis person, deep into it. He was was Portnoy the one who exposed him, for the first time?
I don't think so.
I don't feel like Portnoy protected his own ass there, really, right? It seems very, very clear that he told one side of the story. And then it turns out he was reimbursed $5 million. Like, that's wild. to not say that bit of the story when he tries to describe that he was the good guy in all of this.
Yeah. So Saturday was all spent just trying to unpack this. It was a lot of speculation. Like, okay, who were the insiders? Who was involved in this? And then Portnoy comes out Sunday morning. He's like, hey, you guys want to hear a story? And he runs up a Spaces and tells his side of the story. Effectively, he was told about the token because he was actively researching, who to potentially help him launch his own coin. He had info about it. He traded it on the gun, and he lost, and he was reimbursed $5 million from Hayden. He also was offered tokens to promote Libra, which he denied because he wanted to be able to, in the post, disclose that he was being paid, and they didn't want him to do that. So he said he could not do that, which some have kind of pointed to Portnoy, putting him on a pedestal as the only honest person in the trenches. I think perhaps that's a side conversation path we could go down. But that's really what kind of blew the lid off all of this. So Portnoy was the first one to really speak up, I would say. And then this basically, everyone immediately realized, okay, there were insiders who got tokens. There were insiders who knew about this before. And then what happened last night, CoffeeZilla landed an interview with Hayden. I have actually not had a chance to listen to this. It dropped last night after I went to bed, and I was busy this morning, not able to catch up on it. But I think Hayden effectively told the whole story.
I listened to it. To it all.
Yeah. What were your takeaways? Oh yeah, you wrote about it too. He missed a sniping. He still has the $100 million, which he's kind of using as leverage here. What were your takeaways, man?
I mean, a lot of this stuff, I think if you're not familiar with meme coins, will be shocking. Like the whole he bought a ton of the supply at the same time. I feel like most people in meme coins kind of know that's going on, maybe not to the extent. I think the shocking stuff was that this appears to have been a group that was like a repeat offender, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a repeat offender of some of the biggest coins. So he was involved. He said explicitly he was involved in Melania, and that they exited basically. He says, and then that wallet has since been linked by Bubble Maps to a bunch of other rugs, which is kind of what I saw the moment it came out. I remember a lot of people saying, hey, this deploy wallet's been linked to tons of rugs. If you remember, that was the first bit of FUD. It was hey, you need to look into this deploy wallet. And then the other thing is the bit about Trump. So he said that people had been asked to had been able to get in at $500 million. I don't know if that's Mark Current or FTV at a dinner, which kind of matches up. We knew there was those dinners beforehand. I'd be very unsurprised if the links there go back to the Bitcoin Magazine team, the Bitcoin team that were organizing all those dinners. I would be very unsurprised if that's the insiders that are being spoken about here. Then what else is there? Yeah, just the brazenness about it. So the brazenness around the idea that some of these influencers were getting allocations plus tip-offs. He's basically just yeah, that's how it works. He does point the finger more broadly at obviously the token launching platforms that are there's a lot of people who stand to benefit from these coins doing well. And that he also maybe points to the question of how do we expect these teams to make money? So how do we expect the Trump team to make money? How do we expect the Argentina coin to make money? Which I actually, in all of this, I do agree. People want to launch coins so they make money, right? And sure. we still don't really. If they're going to be the launcher, that's what we don't like. Well, that's why we've kind of coalesced around this concept of adopting a existing coin. That's why people felt better about Portnoy and all this sort of stuff. But that's not going to be the case for everyone, right? So if Trump wants to launch a meme coin, he's not just going to adopt a current meme coin and say, this is my meme coin. So maybe there isn't a proper resolution there, but it's very, very clear that if he's trying to shroud, muddy the waters and be hey, there's no perfect way to launch. The way that they did it was the 100% worst way to launch. They basically did a one-sided LP and then started producing liquidity as it went higher. That is the number one way to extract. So the idea that somehow everything is as bad as each other is not the case. The way to do it is maybe fund it with stables at the start, or if you are going to do one-sided, then then you have to, if you're going to reduce the LP, you want to buy some, as their sell pressures. If you're going to reduce the LP, buy some as the sell pressure, or add to the LP as it goes higher. They did the exact way to like perfectly rug a coin here, which I think should be noted.
That's a big part of why things went south and why this became such a scandal. Maybe everything is totally different, if they actually market make this a little more properly.
Well, right. I've seen market makers come out and say, yeah, this is the exact opposite of how it should be done. The other thing is like he's doxxed living in LA. Mm-hmm. Like this feels very LA vibe. This feels like an LA rug and part of potentially like an LA number of rugs, let's say. I don't know, but what's clear to me now is that there's a number of different people who look implicated. I would say the most obvious ones are some of, alongside obviously Keltio, who's like basically putting all his cards on the table. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is denied, right? Everyone else is seen to be like, no, I didn't know anything about it, or if I did know about it, I didn't get paid from it, or we weren't insiders, and that includes Meteora, that includes Jupiter, that includes Moonshot, that includes all of the influencers. And I think we're going to see a lot of stuff come out now about people who not just this, but other ones. It's very, very clear that like there's motivations both from like media organizations, people like choose Rich Nick or just Nick, yes. NFT Nick, all like trying to get screenshots of like what was said and when and all this sort of stuff. So I think we're gonna get a lot of stuff from different people here. It is now, a lot of people made a lot of money on these coins, and it was the same people each time, and they aped a disproportionate amount relative to what they ape other things.
Yes.
And I think it's now, that's more than now a pattern of behavior when this now comes out. Like you need to be whiter than white, in my opinion, to be like, I wasn't involved in any of this. Like, why were you YOLOing $1 million into this coin? Right? Or I don't know how much, but like, let's say hundreds of thousands. And then you're saying that wasn't the case for like all the other ones. This doesn't really this can't have been the only one, in my opinion. Like, I think it's now pretty clear what was going on. And I think people are I think people are 100% justified to be furious about this. Like, yes. Absolutely furious. Because the meta was always rotate. There's a new runner each day. Same people winning, the same motivation to get into the coins, like big screenshots, all this sort of stuff. And then it turns out that it was completely rigged and people had insider knowledge, or they would maybe Portnoy was given money, straight up just given money. It makes me think that the people just don't want to buy a new coin, and there's people feel like the tables have been rigged for too long now.
That's the big takeaway. And Logan, I want to hear from you here in a second, but this meme coin game has been going on for a few years. I mean, technically since Doge, but then like Pepe and Mog, and then I think it really blew up on Solana with WIF starting in Q4 2023. It felt like more of a fair game for quite some time, but it's felt worse and worse over the last quarter. And this scandal just blew off the top that, in fact, everyone has been playing a rigged game, at least on these major launches. And people don't want to play a rigged game. And now they're starting to point fingers at, okay, who was complicit in the rigged game and who benefited from it the most? And it seems clear that investigations will go deeper. And it seems clear that there was a large group of tokens. Like, we know for sure Melania is involved. It's clear that Trump was involved, the Trump token, and very likely some of the other recent high-profile Solana coin launches. But Logan, curious. Mando, jump in, and Logan.
Just to interject slightly, that guy Champtogram was literally on the board for this fucking group, right? You remember that guy from NFTs?
I'm not familiar.
You don't know Champtagram? Champtagram?
I think I know who
He's
you're
on the
talking
board
about, but
for Kelsia, right? Like, and he's like very LA influencer, friends with them all. Yeah, like it's. I think we're about to find out a lot of stuff because these guys. The other thing is, if this does turn criminal, then you're going to find out everything. Because the one way to alleviate yourself from a criminal trial is to basically start ratting, and I think that's the next stage of this, right? Is that like this Kelsia guy clearly has dirt on everyone, right?
And he's talking.
We've got a Diddy situation on our hands, you know.
Just jump in here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Mando, to your point about Portnoy speaking up. I mean, that's the one thing you can say here is that he was the first to willingly chat about this and sort of kicked off a lot of what has come to transpire over the course of the last 24 hours in particular. So for that, I guess a small kudos is owed to sort of getting the ball rolling here. You mentioned talking about, just why would you randomly ape this stuff? I think, when compared to some of these other high profile launches, this was the most questionable. Maybe if you disregard the Central African Republic one, this was the most questionable in terms of legitimacy right out of the gate. You had the deployer stuff, right, which was highly questionable. And then also, too, if you just did even a minute of research, like click the website in the tweet from Malay, the thing about applying for funding is a Google form. The support address is like just randomly kip protocol something support@gmail.com. I mean, these things are things that typically would have been major red flags to everyone. Yet somehow, some way, many people allege that that this was real right out of the gate. Like, how are you willing to take that chance that it's real right out of the gate if you don't know something else? This was crazy. The whole thing. I mean, I don't need to add too much to summarize the actual events themselves, but there's a lot here, and everything's going to come out. Yeah, and I look forward to consuming that content when it does.
That was what jumped out to me. So like Banks was very publicly defending himself. He said he aped 500,000 on the gun or something along those lines. And then he shared his thesis that this would be bigger than the Trump coin was his upside. Like what? Like you thought like this Argentina coin that has a Google form to fundraise for businesses was going to be bigger than the Trump coin?
I think a really dangerous precedent had been set in the last few weeks, over the course of meme coins as well. It's just like the willingness to engage with things that likely aren't real anyway. Like we don't care actually if it's real or not. Like that's a really horrible game to play. It's one of the reasons I didn't do that well on Trump. It was because I was trying to figure out if it was real or not. Right? Like as a lot of people were like, is this real or not? I'm not willing to take the chance personally. And I didn't gamble on whether it was real, and then you missed it. It was gone. And it seems like all those things just went out the window. There was no more caring about whether it was real or not. If the tweet stayed up for a long enough time, I started to see those things like, well, he also posted on Instagram. Like we haven't seen 500,000 other accounts get hacked on all social platforms. Look at the Chill Guy thing. Like every social platform that guy owned got hacked. It's a really dangerous, bad precedent that hopefully starts to wash itself out with the rest of this stuff, but just a wild timeline.
There's a lot of ways we can unpack this, man. I know you've got to run here in a little bit. So I'm curious for your thoughts on the meme coin market. Some people are calling it dead forever. Like I've already seen some folks who are a little bit perhaps more realistic. I kind of like this tweet from Dime here. Saying basically we were at peak of Mount Stupid 2024. We're now entering the Valley of Despair. And it does see a path out of it. I'm curious for your read on where this sector of the market goes near term.
Yeah, look, I think we have to appreciate the how the meme market has evolved. Like you just said, originally it was, like diehard communities or like OG memes. Then it moved into cults, I would say, like the era of Myriad. And then it moved into the hyper rotate, any coin goes after Trump. Okay. I would be unsurprised if after a period of of, let's say, just healing, we move back into either one or two, like the first two. Like I would be unsurprised if Pepe does well in a market like this, like genuinely. I would be unsurprised if Mog does well. The coins that maybe have been around for a little bit longer. I'd be unsurprised if like Doge did well. Do you know? I still think people are looking for Bitcoin plus returns. You know, there's no way you have $240 billion of stable coins and Bitcoin's at 100K, and you're telling me that like people are just going to stop trading memes. This is not the case. But what I do think is that like maybe the era of what we have just seen, which is like internet capital markets into buy the coin of the runner of the day, into hyper rotation. I think that era may be a little bit dead, and I don't think people will necessarily want to play that. And I think a lot of that is on Sol. So I think, and that leads to questions about Solana, Solana use. That leads to questions about Sol DeFi. That leads to questions to a lot of stuff. Like this was just the way the multi layers of scams to this just feels bad. Like this wasn't just a, Melee backed out. It then unveiled a layer of KOLs and systemic rugging that just like I think people for like hundreds of millions that people just do not feel good around.
It seems that some of the this is alleged. It feels like there are people working at some of the protocol teams that were perhaps plugged into this. I'll be very curious if more information on that comes out. And it's a tricky one because like I do think the protocols need to have the information ahead. Like they need to be ready. Like if we're thinking about what are the processes and controls to put in place to fix this, like we want, ideally some level of diligence done from protocols like this as a way, to prevent major, scandals like this. Now that's a larger debate on like how much onus should be on them. Do they have the resources to do that? So on and so forth. And now you're not talking about open markets necessarily anymore. So it's a bit of a longer discussion, but like the Moonshot team, for example, Decrypt had a nice write-up about this. It was eye-opening. Like they borrowed $160 million to have MoonPay, sorry. $160 million to have enough capital on hand to support trading at launch. So like that makes sense. And they helped facilitate what was a successful launch. So you can go into the merits of the token itself, perhaps separately. But like that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that Jupiter would have information so they could verify a token address or not. If they're sharing that information with outside parties ahead, of course, that's where things get really tricky. And I do think it has eroded some confidence in these protocols. And we've talked about on this show how, one way to play this market was to play the picks and shovels. And it's hard to, I feel like they're not going to be spared. If we're going to get a reset in meme coins on Solana, which I do think we will, it's a question of how long it is. I think that's going to impact the pick and shovel plays as well. Logan, I feel like you were going to jump in there. Feel free to.
No, I was just clarifying on the MoonPay thing, and that was actually it was during the whole thing, so it wasn't necessarily before the launch. Keith Grossman indicated that he didn't actually know the Trump coin was coming, but nevertheless, these protocols worked together in that instance to ensure that things operated smoothly, and I'm totally for them knowing. Or at least some of the parties there knowing and doing as best as they possibly can to protect consumers. I'm totally for that. So someone at Meteora probably needs to work with somebody at Jupiter probably needs to work with somebody. And they are taking small steps. You saw like the Jupiter organic score thing that they're working on. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nobody has the answer right now on how to do these things in the best possible way. But one thing that can't happen and should never have happened, again, this is all alleged, is that these people are taking that information that they do have and they're acting on it, right? And they're creating advantages for not necessarily themselves, but their friends or other folks close to them. And that's a huge, huge problem. That's a very simple, no, that unfortunately seemingly has gone on for a long, long time. I think Mando may have said this at the beginning. It felt like this stuff had probably been happening, not maybe even related to these coins that we're talking about today, but like you sort of had this sense that insiders were always winning. but this is just kind of the unveiling of that in a very, very major fashion that, okay, yeah. We knew we were playing a rigged game before, but like the dealer just showed us the rigged cards.
It was the Scooby-Doo. They pulled the mask off.
Exactly.
All who the Scooby-Doo villain is. Mando, before you go, can ETH win here? Is Ethereum one of the biggest winners?
Easily. If there's an obvious win for that, in my opinion. If there's any time for ETH to regain the culture, it's this, if I'm honest. Like you have the Solana unlocks this month, which already made it look slightly precarious into what just happened here. People still want to degen, and I don't think ETH is the place to degen. But I think in a period where people want a bit more stability, ETH can win with some of those battles.
Pentoshi is calling for alt season. There's a few voices on my timeline who are continuously calling for alt season. I've seen some folks who said,
okay, I gotta go.
Okay,
Sorry, guys.
Thanks for joining on. The ETH Bitcoin bottom is in. You look at that chart. I mean, this is not a great looking chart. It's hard to sugarcoat it. I mean, unless you really think it's just going to go down forever, it does feel like this could have been an inflection point. So not only did we have like the implosion of the Solana casino, we had the staking ETFs getting approved. So that was a storyline that was largely kind of brushed under the rug this past week because of everything else that happened. And like that feels like a big deal. And, who knows? Maybe the Solana ETF is delayed a little bit because of this international crypto scandal. Like that could be an impact.
I'm sorry. I'm only laughing just because of the absurdity of the situation. It does feel like, and I don't really hold any ETH. I was making the consensus trade that everybody else was, and it felt like why hold ETH? Like what was the point in holding ETH over the course of the last year or so? I wasn't actively participating on the chain. I was doing all that, everything we were doing, right? We were doing on Solana. And that's largely the case, still. But the tailwinds are there and quite obvious. The staking ETF stuff, as you mentioned, Trump's own kin buying and building a DeFi or whatever you want to call their World Liberty Financial on largely via Ethereum's rails, and acquiring Ethereum assets. You have, and then this major narrative shift over the course of the last few days. It was a big thing for a long time. You remember months ago, founders suggesting that they were moving from Ethereum to Solana or considering launching their thing on Solana because of, the community, because of the activity, because of like the warmness that was coming from these protocols and the founders, and they weren't getting that on Ethereum. And now you've got this point where it's like, oh boy, there's a chance that some of the protocols are not operating as faithfully as they should be. You have participants feeling scorned and burned. Things might, feel a little greener back on the other side at this point in time. It does feel like, you said inflection point, Tyler, at least from that perspective of sentiment on my timeline, it feels like this weekend was a major shift towards, you know what? ETH hasn't rugged us in a while. And that's
Old Faithful. Of course, Bitcoin is the real Old Faithful. But if you think there's going to be any kind of an alt season, it does feel like Ethereum is probably now back front and center. Of course, also while we've been talking, that ETH has been selling off. It hit like 28.40 before the show. It's back down to 27.80. So who knows how this will play out. Logan, we got Mando's thoughts. What are your thoughts about, like, are memes going to come back? How soon? What's your current mental model here? Because you've been in the trenches a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think memes are going anywhere. It's developed its own ecosystem at this point. And I think it operates, of course, it's very closely tied to what everything is happening in macro, and is impacted by that. But it's its own little bubble of activity that's not going away. And as long as you have things like Pump Fun and other token launchpads that make it easy as possible and nearly zero cost to build tokens, there are going to be many, many more tokens, millions more tokens created that are going to be traded by ourselves and everybody else for probably a while. at the very least. I do think it's going to need a little bit of a reset. One of the big questions has been, how do we keep launching these? How do we do the big ones, but also like, how do we just keep launching them to make it fairer for people? One of the things that both CoffeeZilla, Hayden, and I think many, many other folks recognize and talked about is like, there is an unfair advantage beyond the insider information. There's also an unfair advantage for, the technical acumen and the sniping of contracts as soon as they're live on the blockchain. People getting the tokens and astronomical amounts of tokens prior to anybody's, any real person's opportunity to buy them, and creating, just completely unfair advantages in that way. And yes, it's a skill issue in some way, right? I don't know how to do the technical things that those folks are doing, using whatever they're using, right, to make those purchases, whatever you want to call that. But at the same time, like, if you want to create fair launches and pre-sales, to many people don't think pre-sales are the best fair launch either. Like, we got to find some other way, find a happy medium of sorts, so that it doesn't feel like only insiders are winning. Insiders are always going to win, for the foreseeable future, probably ever. But like, you gotta shift down the win percentages a little bit to, like, maybe they're not winning 98% of the share. They're winning like 70% of the share. I don't know what it is, Tyler, but we got to do something slightly different about the token launches to make it a little bit more fair, or else this doesn't exist in the same way. And then you do, I think, go straight back to Murad's list and the cult communities, because that's literally the easiest and, at this point in time, probably fairest way to just kind of back a meme and feel okay going. You can't feel okay going to bed with any meme coins right now. Not on Solana. No way. Not a chance. Maybe Fartcoin, but like, that has not escaped the last few weeks. But yeah,
no, it's just trading at basically its final level of support. Even Kobe weighed in on the conversation yesterday, right? And he said it is a self-correcting problem, and I agree, it is a self-correcting problem. He also, says there are actors here who are just going to always do this stuff. And then even later on in this post, he even like jokes about launching a coin, and then someone launched it, people traded it, which just proved the point that the casino is not going away. So I think there's a lot to unpack. If we're being realistic about all of this, I see the take that folks are going to rotate to true builders, more real projects. Of course, I'm rooting for that. I want that to happen. At the same time, like, they have to be priced correctly to where folks think they're going to be able to get a return on that. And if a new great protocol launches, but if it launches at $3 billion, it's probably not going to be that appetizing, for the guy who's got $2,000 to $3,000 to play with. And I think it's naive to think that person isn't going to likely look back downstream. So I do think that the meme market will continue to exist. I love Mando's point of perhaps we can erase the last few, or move past the last few iterations of this cycle, where like we're just trading phrases and news events and country coins.
Yeah.
And perhaps get back to the OG days when it was actual memes, and you could actually go to sleep and maybe things moved a little bit slower. And then, of course, the cycle is going to play out again. So like, even if we reset, it's silly to think that we're not also going to do this, because this happened last year.
Yeah.
Right? We had Q1. We saw like WIF run up to about 3.5, 4 billion. Then BOEM came out. BOEM was the blow off top weekend. Then Slurf came out, and it was
smaller. It's the loops. Yeah.
Now it's happening again.
It's the descending loops. I mean, it really is. None of those things, people are always going to keep trading those. Next time Elon changes his handle, people are going to be trading those coins. And I think it's totally fine to be trading those coins. You just got to know where we're at. We are at the very bottom loops of those like ephemeral news event things. We were talking about this last night, that Echo the Dolphin thing that Kobe tweeted about, that would have been a $20 million coin, like maybe even 2 weeks ago. And I think last night, like one of the hundreds that launched made it to like maybe 2 million or something. Like, just know where you're at. I think it's okay to keep trading those if that's what you like to trade. Like if you're quick to identify things that are happening in the news or whatever, and you have fun trading that stuff, like the opportunity's there. There's not much of it right now. There's not a lot to squeeze out of it, but I don't think that's ever going away. The tokenize everything thing, that much, that cycle continues to chip away. Like everything is getting tokenized in some way or another. Right now it's our attention. Yeah, it's wild. I would love a reset. I'm tired. Everybody's tired of this current iteration of memes. The one thing about that, like ephemeral news headline thing, which has been a big piece of this last meta, is it the speed at which it operates.
Mhm.
And that's a part that is just like really difficult to continue to participate in when you can't feel like you run away. The runner from 1 to 50 million in a day and you miss it, you can't look away from your phone. Like that stuff sucks. I do hope that stuff's behind us for the most part.
Well, that's the reason why people liked the Myriad memes and like the whiffs and the Pepes, because you didn't have to trade it in the first 4 hours to get in. Like whiff was available for weeks, sub 20, sub 50 million. Even Farkcoin, and Farkcoin was at sub 50 for a month. I mean, the cycle has sped up a little bit, but there was time. The Myriad coins were dead for 9 months. Go look at the charts. Like you could have entered at whatever price you wanted and seen tremendous returns. I do think that's where we'll get back to. I think Myriad might still be a big winner in all this. And it's funny that he had all the pitchforks aimed at him not too long ago.
I sort of hope so. I don't have any of those bags, so maybe I shouldn't hope so much. But like, I kind of at this point sort of hope. Well, for many reasons. Beyond this, right? He keeps saying everything's going to be higher and whatever. As he keep backing up his timeline, like all-time highs in February, all-time highs in March.
Maybe he breaks on all-time highs every month for a little while. Myriad, as much as we want that to happen. Myriad SPX is 650 million. MOG is 350. Giga's 300. So these are still fairly high market caps, but of course down a lot from peak. Well, we've got a few minutes left in the show. We did 50 on Libra, and rightfully so. I think there was a big piece of news this morning. Folks probably have seen this, but Kaido has been the talk of the town. Last week they introduced their token. The news from this morning was that they had taken a snapshot. Let me try to find the announcement here. Snapshot for Yaps has been taken 4 a.m. UTC, and they're doing a snapshot for the NFTs 4 a.m. UTC tomorrow. So that's 11 p.m. Eastern tonight. So this will be the probably the last big day of trading for those NFTs for quite some time. What makes this even more interesting, perhaps, is in their next tweet that they're talking about these new pre-TGE projects going live on their launchpad. Voting will begin next week, integrating Yap votes and Kaido on-chain holding votes. Some folks are saying maybe those are the votes from the NFTs, but my initial interpretation of this does that mean we're actually going to get these Kaido tokens in the next week? So it feels like the TGE could actually be happening. We saw some of the perhaps early info on this. Kane Leo, Canelo, however you want to say it, shared this info yesterday. Do some on-chain sleuthing. It looks like Kaido is going to be on base, 1 billion supply. There's 3 buckets of tokens, 57%, 10%, and 33.3%. And folks are starting to speculate what that actually means. So we do not know that 33% is going to an airdrop, but it's likely 33% or 10%. It's probably one of those two buckets. And of course, we don't know what the splits are in there. Logie, what's your reactions to Kaido? We've seen some wild price speculation going around the timeline this weekend. Do you think that we're going to get the token this week? And where do you think it's going to come out?
Yeah, I do. I think you'll get the token. I don't see any other way to interpret really the on-chain nature of that post. Tokens are consistently used as governance for governance purposes and voting and whatever. So it would make a lot of sense to refer to it in that way, and then to provide it, especially if you do a snapshot. And the deployment has already been done and basically confirmed by is his name you? I'm gonna mess up. Yeah.
You.
So I do think he'll get it this week. The really cool part, I mean, kudos to Kaido in the fact that, like, there's lots to be said about the quality of the tweets and the Yap earning and all that stuff. And I'm a skeptic for much of that as well. But like the willingness to just kind of do this and not let it play out anymore has been nice. It was like what Yaps were put out there in early December, maybe late November.
That's right.
Yeah. So like a couple months. And it really started to crescendo where people started to farm it much, much harder, maybe in the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
At least on my timeline. And it was becoming overwhelming and overbearing, like the amount of stupid Yap tweets and the Yap. The same thing happens with every airdrop. I don't blame the people, but it's the hopium about like, if it's this is how much you'll earn, those things. And probably this was already planned, but if it wasn't, to put the kibosh on that is a real cool move. So I'm excited to see what happens. But I don't have many apps. I think I finished with like 21. So I wish, selfishly, I guess I wish it would have extended out a little bit more. But I'm not mad. I'm excited to see what happens. And I think that's cool that they kind of shut it down in like a 2-month span, while else many other farming programs have lasted years.
I thought it was going to go at least another month.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I want to shout out Ultra for finding this. So he went through their GitHub again. This is unconfirmed. But he's laid out some speculation for what he thinks Kaido will be. He basically said this is just an early warm-up stage. They're going to turn into a decentralized data network. They're going to monetize it that way. And he's laid out how miners and validators will be able to participate and earn rewards in that ecosystem. Rewards here being Kaido tokens. Still unclear exactly what all of this means.
Yeah.
And then he says they're going to generate revenue through sponsors, users paying for premium features and search services. It's not a stretch to me that people would pay for this data.
Yeah. I don't think so either. And actually, like as an aside, I was looking up, decentralized data decentralized data, big lots of buzzwords, right? But like Grass, for example, is a big decentralized data protocol, if you want to call it that.
What kind of data does Grass?
So that's your excess internet bandwidth, right?
Okay.
And I'm not a tech guy here, so I might be misinterpreting something and misrepresenting it. So I don't mean to, but all I want to do, relatively speaking, is that this is a decentralized data. My understanding of it is that decentralized data and trying to kind of cut out some middlemen, much like Kaido would be doing in this way, if I'm interpreting that post correctly. And rewarding users for it as opposed to somebody in the middle, right? That's aggregating it. I'm just using this as a frame of reference. $1.57 billion FDV for something similar, at least in buzzword, not perhaps in actual, actionable, technical, whatever, cahoots. I don't know.
Sure.
But I looked at that and so when I see that and I see all the buzz around Kaido, and then I see those things that are unconfirmed, of course, this is just speculation from the GitHub. It doesn't seem as outlandish to me that it would be a $1.5 billion FDV type protocol. I don't know. It's tough for me to make up too much else. I mean, we're speculating. We're like 5 layers deep on the speculations to get to that point. But what seemed more outlandish to me previously seems less outlandish at this point in time, I should say. So
now the Kaido token is trading at $1.20 on Avo pre-markets. It was up at 240 over the weekend, actually on decent volume. So it had 1.5 million in volume, but now it looks like the volume is off a cliff. It's only 50K in volume.
So what's that give it? FTV?
That's FTV. Yeah, these are FTV.
Okay.
So it's trading at 1.16 FTV right now.
That seems okay based on, again, a lot of like really weird back of the napkin math type stuff, but like I've seen worse, of course.
In Legendary, he did an OTC deal with Lupify, paid $30.
Is that real? That's real?
Yeah. That looks like it's real.
Wow.
So we'll see if that bet pays off, but he is putting money up that he thinks Yaps will be worth more than $30. So there's been some outlandish price takes out there, I think on purpose to generate views and whatnot. They're not going to be 100. Could they be 30? I mean, clearly Legendary thinks they will. I'll be happy with anything over 10, I think, at this point. Hopefully more than $1. Like, I think people will be disappointed if it's $1.
The great thing about the way you did it, Tyler, though, is like you didn't. from my understanding, really go out of your way to be farming this. You acted kind of on Twitter like you would act. So this is a bonus for everything you're doing anyway. That's awesome.
Well, and that's how you can even make the argument that the system gets degraded the longer the farming is open, and perhaps that's why they shut it down so fast.
It was already getting degraded pretty heavily. Like,
yes.
15 people made the same tweet on my timeline, and 15 smart people made the same tweet. And whatever, that happens with big news and stuff, but like, you can tell that a little bit of it was Kaido related, which is unfortunate. I am very happy to not see the I've earned X amount of yaps in the last 24 hours tweets. I'm glad they'll be off my timeline.
The real signal for Kaido was when people were organically tweeting about topics, and you could see where actual mindshare was and who was driving conversations. And that data got distorted during farming. And hopefully we get a reset here, and we will see who was just speaking up to earn yaps and then who actually cares to be in these conversations. Yeah. So I am excited for that, though. I think there's going to be more seasons. I think there's also likely going to be vesting of some kind. Before we wrap up, I know we're over. Let's recap our Myriad bets. We had some success over the weekend. So Diamond Hands Poker played out on Saturday. It looks like there ended up being 10 markets, at least 6 million Pingu bet. So pretty happy with the overall pot sizes. Our boy Farokh crushed it. So he won the largest pot. So that bet was a winner. No on 4 of a kind hit. That one was a little bit of a sweat because I think someone may have been dealt it, but they didn't play it. And so It didn't resolve. And then there was 7-2 was a yes. That was an underdog bet.
Yeah. Our analysis was spot on. I unfortunately I cannot participate in these. Otherwise, the Farokh one was my top bet from the stream on Friday. I would have been able to cash in. It was like 40% or something, 45% when we were talking about it.
Yeah, that's a plus 150% gain. Logie gave everyone the alpha.
I gave everyone the alpha. Yeah. Well, hopefully some people made that bet. I did not watch the stream, so I can't suggest that the analysis I provided, which was that Farokh would be a little more gunslingy than Luca. I don't know that that's actually what transpired, but I'm going to tell myself it did. So,
yeah. Well, the results were good. Love seeing some real money markets on Myriad. Exciting for more to come. Folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up there. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Thanks to our partners. As always, we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until then, go make today a great day.